We begin with new details on sexual harassment on Capitol Hill. The first Democrat, Congresswoman Kathleen Rice, is calling for John Conyers to resign amid multiple allegations of sexual misconduct. Meanwhile, her Democratic colleagues are spending their time pouncing on Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore, demanding that he drop out of the race amid allegations of sexual misconduct. But of course, when it comes to one of their own accused, Rice remains the only Democrat in Congress so far to publicly call for the resignation of Conyers. Meanwhile, no Democrat has publicly called for Senator Al Franken to resign. Some Democrats are even going as far as to question the victim, including Democratic Congressman James Clyburn, who told the New York Times that the allegations against Congressman Conyers, quote, could be made up. So what will it take to end this hypocrisy? Let's bring in a panel. Tammy, Fox News political contributor, a member of the Independent Women's Voice Board of Directors, and a Washington Times columnist, Beverly Hallberg, president of District Media Group and a contributor to The Hill, and Gabby Marrongiello, a Washington Examiner, White House a correspondent. Ladies, thanks for joining us. Tammy, you wrote an article today, The Liberal Ruse of Feminism. We just got the breaking news on the first Democratic congressperson, a congresswoman, as a matter of fact, to call for Conyers to step down. No such calls for Al Franken. Yeah. And here's the thing. What makes it so frustrating for a lot of folks is that the avalanche effect, whenever it was someone on the right, until now this week, a disaster for the Democratic Party, a disaster for progressives, a disaster for the progressive mainstream media, and very reluctant to call for anyone to step down. Yeah, well, my column really is about the beginning of this, which was the precedent that was set during the Clinton years by the Democrats. They was pretty much scorched earth, destroying the accusers of Bill Clinton, accepting what he was doing, effectively saying that if you're right on the issues or you proclaim your feminism loud enough, you will get a free pass. Ironically now, 25 years later, we're seeing that chicken come home to roost. This is why there's such a volume here, because the messaging then was that if you're right on the issues, we will look away with whatever else you might be doing. We're now even seeing that implemented. A columnist with the New York Times, others questioning the nature of whether or not this is appropriate, because if they're good enough on the issues and we shouldn't go after our own. But this is what has caused this catastrophe. Right. It's mentality. So the Democrats, though, they have a political framework here. If they have the precedent of a resignation, it means that if we know that there's been $17 million paid out, how many more Democrats then would either have to resign or calls for their removal? That, I think, is their concern. They should be concerned. But really, we need to clean house at this point, don't we? Sure. And Beverly, the introspection that Tammy is talking about and that she wrote about today reflected in late news also today. A lot of breaking news late in the afternoon. Kathleen Sebelius, formerly head of the HHS and, of course, the governor of Kansas, came out and said not only did the people look the other way, but they went after the women who came forward and accused him, referring to Bill Clinton and all the other the accusations against him. And so it doubled down on not only bad behavior, but abusive behavior, and people attacked the victims. Obviously, very, very damning comments there. But people are saying it's a little bit too little too late to go after the Clintons. You've got Al Franken, and now you have Conyers, among others.
Yeah, and I would say there's just true hypocrisy across the table on this. I've even found it fascinating. Some feminists out there, there's one named Kate Harding, who is a co-editor of a book called Nasty Woman, and she has even gone out and said that Al Franken should not step down. She said, because I care about the votes that he has. I care about his issues. And I was at that women's march last year in January, right after Trump won. Didn't agree with a lot of the positions that those women took because they made it all about Donald Trump and his past statements. And so I find it highly hypocritical, especially from women who call themselves feminists, to say, oh, it's fine if Al Franken stays, but Donald Trump and others like him need to go. So I think the hypocrisy is definitely highlighted in the past few weeks. No, Gabby, there's no doubt in my mind that a lot of progressives probably didn't, obviously they didn't anticipate the avalanche of accusations and sort of the pendulum swinging back so quickly that to put the harsh spotlight on themselves. And now they've got to sort of fight against this sort of precedent that they set when it was the Roy Moores of the world.
Absolutely, and I think Beverly hit it on the head. Not only is this hypocritical of people on the left, but it's really peak moral relativism to see folks like Michelle Goldberg, that New York Times columnist who initially called for Al Franken to resign and then later said, well, you know, I realize that he may have groped this woman and made some inappropriate jokes throughout his career as a comedian, but he's been so good on so many women's issues for so long that maybe we should let him stick around in the Senate. I mean, that's what we're hearing right now from the progressives, from members of Congress who are on the left. And I really do think that it's a moment of reckoning for them. But not only them, for conservatives also. I mean, this does go across the board. There are allegations leveled right now against Roy Moore, a Republican candidate for Senate. And I do think that there needs to be careful attention paid to both sides of the aisle in terms of how they react to these accusers and these situations.
You know, listen, Tammy, I think what we're going to find out is probably end up circling back to the notion of due process.
Yeah.
You know, the lynch mobs that rose up when it was an issue on the right during the summer and more recently a couple of weeks ago, now are having a hard time applying that same form of justice to themselves, including the Michelle Goldberg, who said it's almost as soon as she published that article, she started having second thoughts, based because she liked the guy. Well, that's fine. But because you don't like Roy Moore, it's okay to pile on him.
Well, for those who are too young to remember, again, 25 years ago, this year is the anniversary of the Clinton election in '92, a campaign on which I worked, actually. This is a generational issue now, and the argument is exactly the same as it was with Bill Clinton at the time. But when it comes to, like with Roy Moore, you've seen, whether it's Mitch McConnell and others, be very direct about how he should withdraw and does not deserve to be in the Senate. But then Mitch McConnell has a few things to answer for. He's got his hands full with people already in the Senate that he has been silent about. Where is he on Al Franken? Where is the call from Mitch McConnell in that regard? We do want consistency. We absolutely want that. And my prediction is, look, what we've already seen. This is going to be about 70-30 when it comes to the Democrats being affected versus Republicans. But no matter who it is, it has to be dealt with considerably. But then we also need to make sure that we don't conflate consensual relationships, issues of just a guy being a jerk maybe, versus assault. Al Franken forcibly kissed a woman against her will. That is assault. And these are things we have to remember.
He apologized for the photograph. He hasn't apologized for the allegation because he denies it so far.